It's
starting.
pretty obvious. I was a cattle farmer in Virginia.
Perfect.
Yeah,
As one
makes
is.
sense.
That's how I got into human AI.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the BizDev Podcast, the podcast about developing your business. I'm David Baxter, your host, and I'm joined, per usual, by Beanie Extraordinaire Gary Voigt. What's going on, man?
This is only, I think, my third one, and I have an arsenal to show off. So this is going to be a repeated pattern.
They
for a
look
while.
exactly the same. So the fact that you
No,
call
there's-
them different, it's a different color with a different patch that I can't read. So to me,
Yeah.
you just look stupid in different colors. But I'm glad
Hey,
you're
man.
sticking with it.
I'm sorry you have no sense of style, but that's okay. We'll move on.
Wow.
I'm just going to wear a
I'm liking the
fedora.
vibe already. I'm like,
It's
Just
like this
that-
every single time, Chuck.
oh, wow. That's what happens when three beards get together, huh?
That's right. That beautiful voice you're hearing right there is our guest. That is Chuck Rinker, who is the founder, I think, is that right? Founder and
Yes, sir.
CEO of PRSONAS by New Media. So that's very cool. We're going to talk AI today because that's where Chuck lives and everyone else wants to talk about AI. We can either talk about AI or Taylor Swift. Which one you want to talk about?
me
Let's
ponder.
do the AI generated version of Taylor Swift.
Now you're
That's in
talking.
the news too.
Let's see.
That's bad.
Because, yeah, I was about to say, we don't want to talk about that. No, we do not want to talk about that. I was just thinking because the Chiefs won. So,
Oh yeah.
that she's in the news again. Anyway. So Chuck, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate you having me, gentlemen.
So you have been, well, I want to start. You've been running PRSONAS since 1999. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm an old man, as you can tell. And yeah, 25 years at the helm. Yes, that is correct.
You got more hair than me, so you're doing fine. What I am most curious, I think, is now we live firmly in the age of AI, but you have been doing that. Well, I don't want to speak for what PRSONAS is. That's your job. But when you're explaining what PRSONAS is, I want you to explain what it was in 1999 versus now, because there's no way you're even on the same planet.
Yeah, that's a great way to start because people, if you saw me on the video, you'd realize I'm getting up there a little. But AI is weird to me, and I say that as being someone who's been almost their entire career in AI, because AI is not new. AI is not even different. AI is better than it was last week, last month, last year, last decade, even last century. But I can remember back in probably the mid 70s, early 80s, when pocket video games first came out. And some of you might remember this. Do you remember the old days? They call it the Mattel football, the 3 rows of red blips.
I had one of those.
Did you have one of those?
Mine was I don't remember what those, was it liquid crystal display? And it was there were the little football guys that were just there and they had like 2 movements, right?
See, that was generation 2. Generation
Okay.
1 were
I
little
remember the
red
one.
LEDs, little red blips. And the reason I
little
bring
red
that up,
dots that would light up.
yeah, but you had 3 of them, and then you had one on the other side. And back then, the human brain is pretty amazing. That's AI. Because back then, we were representing a quarterback, a running back, a blocker, a defensive man. And they had to intelligently move around the screen to tackle each other. That was AI. Your brain would perceive that as football players, and your brain would watch the score, but that was really AI. Our AI really, to this day, when people are like, oh, I'm photorealistic generating and AI is going to take over the world, and I've watched too many Hollywood movies and iRobot's coming and all that good stuff. The reality is AI is not new. It's not even different. It's just better. It's just better. So yeah, that's kind of where PRSONAS really lives in, is what does AI mean? AI since the 1970s and 80s has really been an engagement tool, a human engagement tool, and we're just better at human engagement. And PRSONAS is really just trying to be on that forefront of how do you change the way we communicate with technology.
So give me the 30,000 foot view. What is PRSONAS? If I wanted to hire, buy your product, what is it that you guys do?
Okay, it's really more of a service platform. It's a personality platform. Back in the day when I first started, it was, you would talk to your computers through ticker tape. Then you would talk through them with magnetic tape, and then you got to learn how to use a keyboard. Then we learned how to use mice and touchscreens. Now we're starting to get where things have advanced into chatbots and now into conversational AI. But what's next? If you think about it, we're becoming closer and closer to, from a personas perspective, to answer your question directly, closer and closer to being able to say, let's stop teaching people how to use technology. Let's teach technology how to communicate with us. For you Trekkies out there, you remember the old scene in Trek when Scotty pulls up his mouse and he's like, hey, computer, why isn't this thing responding to me? I mean, that's really where we're hoping to go. And it's really just boiled down to a productivity tool. How do you make this great and wonderful blossoming of technologies you hear out there in the space, the Internet of Things, natural language parsing, computer language understanding, AI, text to speech, speech to text, R language, machine learning, generative AI, all these buzz terms, quite honestly, are just more sophisticated tools that we've been developing over the years. So how do you use that? Stuff's getting so complex. So we build this personality platform and say, okay, if you want to pull all that stuff and wrap it into a personality, what makes Gary Gary outside of the cheesy beanie you keep referencing? I
Oh,
like the
nice.
beanie, by the way. I like the beanie.
Okay, I got a little
What
nervous
make
there, Chuck.
what makes Gary Gary? It's not just that he wears glasses and he's got more black in his beard than I'll ever dream of having again. But what is his personality? What is knowledge base? What does he understand? How does he communicate? What languages does he speak? What's his mannerisms? All that is a personality. And if you were able to take your brand, your image, your person, whatever your use case is, and wrap it into a personality and put that into a package, that's actually what we call a personality profile. And we've taken all those IoT pieces, all that AI stuff we hear so much about, and we've wrapped it behind what we call a personality layer. So we create digital personalities for a variety of use cases, healthcare being one of them, airports, hospitals, trade shows. Just basically, when would you have a digital workforce?
Okay, so for the people who can't see the video or are struggling with what a persona is, when I've done my little bit of research, I go to a website at a kiosk, something, and there is a digital avatar of a person, and they're helping you accomplish a task. Is that the gist of it?
Yeah, there's some granularity in there, but you nailed it. It really boils down to a digital assistant, a virtual assistant, a customer service agent, whatever you want to call them. But at the end of the day, there's a strong background that I possess through conversations with lots of name dropping I can do about, senior vice president of Disney Imagineering and being a director for Madden franchise and EA Sports and all the stuff I did with our government in the simulation world to train troops and all. But at the end of the day, we respond to humans and humans respond to humans in a very intimate, bonded way. And if you could take a human and turn it into a member of your workforce, whether that's just a personal venture or a professional venture, a commercial venture, that's what we do. It's basically, quite honestly, and I hate to be so rudimentary about it because it's too granular to say, but basically it's Siri with eyes and ears is what it really boils down to. And we'll get into conversations around why avatars. The number one question we get is what we call why personas. Why does it matter? Well, I got conversation, I got Siri, I got Alexa, I got Cortana, I got chatbots. Why do we need to put a face to it? And that's a whole science in and of itself. But there are many, many, many valid reasons we could spend hours talking about why personas.
So here's my nerdy question. I'm sure I'm going to have several of these because this is fascinating. Tell me the difference between a persona in, say, 2003, right? I'm going up to a kiosk and I am talking. Let's say I have a full keyboard in front of me. So wherever that makes sense. And I type, let's say this is a healthcare persona. I'm trying to paint the picture for you. They're here to get you checked into a doctor's office. Again, making up a scenario. And I type into the prompt, I like cheese. What does the persona in 2003 do with that response versus one in 2023?
That's an awesome question. And that is a particular use case that we deployed. Matter of fact, we're just going live with the National Health System in London right now with one of our units. And that's exactly what happens. You walk, not you ask for cheese, but you walk through the front of the hospital
We should
And
ask for cheese.
they're so overstaffed, and there's such a burnout in the healthcare sector in the US and Europe, probably worldwide. That patient needs help. They're in an unfamiliar environment. So they can walk up and they'll say things like, I need to fill my prescription, or I came in for a blood sample. Where do I go? And she'll be able to point you in directions, all that good stuff. She'll say, if you say how much is parking, she can tell you how much parking is, but it's all done just as if there was a live agent standing there. I wish it was running, but that's kind of the physical representation right there of one of the units. And so it's really meant to be almost like a digital employee. Now, to your question about the cheese, just like anything, if I ask Gary, now watch, he's probably going to prove me wrong. And I say, what's a good question? What is the highest sampling rate you can get off of a Roland GS8 for recording your home studio? That's a pretty specific piece of information. Do you know that, Gary?
Come
Is it
on.
Yeah, he
144?
does. Not close. It's 92 kilohertz. But that being said,
Oh, okay.
I'm just a little music geek too. The point is that that's very specific knowledge. Now, is it relevant for me to teach my digital employee, my digital persona that's there to help patients to respond to the phrase, I like cheese? If your patient experience wants you to, we put that in her cranium. Her cranium's in the cloud, like a lot of brains are right now. So we can tell her what she responds to, but you train her with a piece of knowledge. I can't walk up to Siri right now and say, hey, Siri, my kid broke their arm. I'm in London. Where do I take my kid for a broken arm at the Princess Alexandra Hospital? Siri won't know that, but our avatars do. So the point I'm trying to make, David, is that we train these digital personalities just like you would onboard a new employee. You're there to take the burden off your staff, not to replace the staff. That's the number 2 question we always get. Aren't you just taking people's jobs? No, we're basically saying we've got a productivity tool like a laptop, but it's got eyes and ears and it's a productivity tool. So we're trying to take the repetitive, mundane task off of your day-to-day operations as a healthcare professional or retail. You mentioned retail. We mentioned, airports, other places. So the ideal here is that if I can take 20 or 30 hours off your plate, realistically, probably 5 to 10 hours per employee off your plate, what would that person do? What would that employee be able to do now? They would be freed up to perform at a higher level and to accomplish things that, as good as our AI is these days, it's not perfect, and it's not nearly good enough for the general purpose replacement of a human. They're very good at specific tasks. So if I can return those hours to you, then your staff becomes highly productive on focusing the high value transactions that only you can do with your customers and or patients. So that's really what we're doing here.
One of the things I've found really interesting about the newest AIs, the generative AIs, the chat GPTs, all those, is when you say, I like cheese out of absolutely nowhere, they'll run with it. And it becomes both a liability and an impressive. Like I was playing, so OpenAI opened up their ability for people to create their own GPTs. That's what they call them. It's basically their own chatbot. And there are now, of course, hundreds of them. Most of them are useless. But I was playing with one. I had a landscape one, and I was playing around with it. And so at first I was like, hey, just give me a backyard. Tell me this, tell me that. And it was saying it. And then I went all of a sudden, I said, which one's the best Avenger? Right? Just to see what would happen. And what was impressive about it, because if I would have asked ChatGPT that itself, it would have gone waxed poetic for 5 paragraphs about which Avenger is the best, because it's prepared to answer any question. But this one was a bot about landscaping. And what was really impressive to me was it says, well, I don't know much about Avengers except to say, maybe you like this trait of Thor or that trait of Iron Man, and maybe we could put those traits in your backyard.
Yep.
I was like, wow, I was trying to derail it, and it took me and pointed me back, used what I said, and put me back on the rails.
That is pretty
That is
impressive.
something that,
Nice segue too.
it's just, there is no, like in 2003, your bot would have said, I'm sorry, I can't help you with Avengers, right? It would have just ended it. and said, that's the end of it. This one is like, I'm smart enough to understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to cheat. I'm going to take you back, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to flavor my response. That was very impressive.
Those are cool.
Do you guys use the generative stuff, or are you playing with that? I know it's new.
Mhm.
That stuff's a year-ish old, at least to the public. Are you guys using any of those yet, or are you still in your own world?
Short answer is yes. And the longer granularity is playing exactly to what you're referring to, which is our especially push into healthcare. We can't afford to let the computer make the final decision. That
Mhm.
decision not only could have ramifications in healthcare, but even with a brand, it could come off and generate something you don't necessarily want it to generate. So the
Yep.
knowledge when that generative AI took the GPT you created and came out with the response, it had a knowledge base behind it, and that
Mhm.
knowledge base was a general purpose knowledge base. We actually use generative AI to create responses, but what we do is work with the patient experience teams or the patient brand teams, and we say, okay, what do you want to, you've got an empty brain here. You've got an empty piece of gray matter. Do you want to pull in some general purpose data? You could. That's not rocket science. It is kind of rocket science. The point is you saw that you can do that, and some of them are programmed for that. So it's not really a matter of what AI is better than the other. It's really a matter of what is the knowledge base? What is the data that you're feeding it? And then we're very sensitive to the outcomes of that data because of the marketplace we have and the ramifications if they're wrong. So typically we will look at that data, we will vet it with the patient experience team, and then we go through a pretty extensive process. We call it active learning, where we generate the responses, we let the patient experience team vet them on a regular basis, and then we meet with them once a month and say, here's how our character is responding. Here's some information. Here are some things that your patient population or your customer population has asked about, like what is your favorite Avenger? Then the patient experience team or the customer experience team can determine how they want that digital employee to respond. So it becomes a very regimented digital employee that is trained specifically to represent your brand or your healthcare information or your information. So basically, we really tighten down the screws on those rails so you don't get off of them too bad. Just because the term hallucinations come to mind, when in the
Yeah.
world, we don't believe AI is self-governing enough right now. There's a lot of governance and compliance issues that we're willing to open that up to our clients. So we do that. We do that railing ourselves.
That's really refreshing, actually. I work with a lot of startups, and they all want AI, and they all want to say that they're using AI because that's where the money is. I get it. I get it. But I had a guy he was doing fintech, financial technology. And he was just jazzed. This was 6, 8 months ago. So ChatGPT was really in the news, but even more nascent than it is now. And he was like, I want to put this in there. I want our app to use ChatGPT. And I was like, no, you don't. Because that thing's going to lie to your people and give them financial advice and tell them to buy a stock that doesn't even exist.
Bingo.
And
Yep.
that liability you're putting on your company is just not worth the investment money you think it is. And there's so many people who just think I've got to put this in my app, even when it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So it's nice to hear, especially in a healthcare scenario, that, whoa, hold on, we got to be smarter about this because
Uh,
I can't have it make, oh, you have Ebola, sir. You need to go.
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
uh,
What? You said Ebola. What? I'm out of here. You don't want that.
absolutely not. No, anecdotally, you're preaching to the choir, and I'm glad to hear you point that out. We were at HIMSS, the Healthcare Information Management Convention. I was a speaker there, and after the speech on AI I gave, a gentleman comes running up to me, and he was with I'll say a large pharma. I won't mention it because I don't want to get sued. And
Sure.
literally goes, "Oh, this is killer. Can you hook up to Chat GPT?" And I go, "Can and do? No, we don't." And his immediate response was, "Well, you're just not a scalable solution then. I don't want to
Mm,
talk to you. You're not scalable." And I'm
nice.
going, "Excuse me? Do you really know what you're talking about?" So no, there is that common mentality that just because a guy carries a C-suite title and believes that generative AI is the solution to all the world's problems. It's generating a certain percentage of its own problems too. So I think we're hell bent on trying to regulate and govern the growth of the AI space, especially as it relates to healthcare and personal health and engagement. Yeah.
Chuck, I had a question, but it's not directly related to this conversation about AI. It was more of a how did you get into this? Because earlier you mentioned something about uh, video games and
Uh-huh.
simulations. So I'd like to know a little bit of the backstory of how you started the company. Like what brought you into it, from what background into
Yeah, it's
starting it?
pretty obvious. I was a cattle farmer in Virginia.
Oh,
Perfect.
yeah,
Yep.
As one
makes
is.
sense. Yeah.
That's how I got into human AI. Yeah.
N
No.
next question. That's the answer. That's a complete and utter answer. I'm good.
But the
Oh,
truth
he said
is
utter.
you said uttered. Look,
Oh my
He didn't
gosh.
even
King.
try to, and he did.
I didn't even try to. I'm that cheesy. The puns just come naturally.
That's pretty funny. No, but all honesty, I did. I grew up a cattle farmer. I'd never been on an airplane till I was 19. And my dad, we were outside of DC about an hour and a half, and my dad used to farm part time and cut hair part time. And he used to cut the hair of one of the seniors down at Navy Federal Credit Union. And I tend to get a little tear in my eye when I tell the story, but he's down there, and um, um, my family still runs the farm I grew up on. My sister, my younger sister, runs it. But in any sense, Dad's down there talking to Admiral Scoggins and said, I need you to do me a favor. I was only 15 at the time, going on 16. He said, my son's too smart to be a farmer. He's shown a real aptitude in computers and tech, so give him a job. So I started working for the military, Naval Federal and Financial Systems. Immediately went over to another contact he had in a targeting system for the simulation world. And this was like, a 16-year-old thinking I was, a real life Splinter Cell, doing black ops
Wow.
work with the government and stuff like that. So he got me into the whole simulation world at the ripe old age of 15, 16, and never really looked back.
Big Pixel builds world-class custom software and amazing apps. Our team of pros puts passion into every one of our projects. Our design-infused development leans heavily on delivering a great experience for our clients and their clients. From startups to enterprises, we can help craft your ideas into real-world products that help your business do better business.
The underlying thread, and I mentioned this earlier, you asked how I got into this, is really that AI is not new. And from creating believable simulations for Uncle Sam all the way through believable simulations to sport gamers. And now all we're doing is we kind of jokingly call it PRSONAS with a purpose. What is a better purpose? What is something we can do that's not strictly for the entertainment value? I'm a hardcore gamer. I still play games. But the point is where can that engagement take? And when you spend your entire career learning how to engage humans at a communication level, not replace humans, but communicate with humans, there really is what I call my biggest problem in life, which is every time I turn my head left or right, I see another shiny object you can chase, because there's so many use cases for improving that human experience with all the technology that's at our disposal. So that's short answer is probably not that short of an answer, but that's how I got into this space.
And what made you
Nice.
take the leap to start your own company?
Had some visions in my head, as much as it's great and wonderful to be at the helm of the sports titles and, have your office littered with 12 TV sets, and half of your job is, you're being paid to watch college football games, and make sure that that whole slogan EA had, it's in the game. That was true. That was true. We copied fonts, we copied the grass types and all that. Point is as much as that was fun, at the end of the day, I was still implementing someone else's vision. I was still implementing um, um, other people's goals. And I started my own thing with a business partner who was in the healthcare space already, and basically said, "Okay, well, what do we see as a potential? Where can this technology go?" And so that, quite honestly, is part of the reason we spun. Of course, it didn't hurt. I had a 12-month-old baby that at EA I was probably working 78 hours a week, and so
Mm.
it didn't help that I wasn't seeing my oldest daughter, Gabrielle, as much as I wanted. So there was a lifestyle change needed at the time as well.
Okay.
So I want to pivot back because I'm still fascinated by AI. I'm done with Gary's questions. I want you to pontificate. It's a two-pronged question.
Uh-oh.
Get 5 years from now, and I specifically want 5 years because I don't want to go future casting way out there. 5 years from now, what does the AI and personas look like today? And then more broadly, what does the world look like with AI as it will be? Like how will it change? Will we be using it all the time, or do you think it's just gonna live in a little chatbot? Where do you think it's going? As someone who's been in this for so long.
And
Go ahead,
just
Gary.
because we've been promised so much previously from the metaverse and from, the whole blockchain and NFTs and Bitcoin and all that.
Hey,
so
Meta's no longer
is it-
doing that. They're going for AGI now.
That's right.
It's no more about floating.
I'm prefacing his answer to be not,
I'm going to preface the answer for
mystical.
some of the business geeks out there. We use Gartner as a consultative partner. And Gartner, if you're all familiar, has this thing called the hype cycle. And there's always this whole world of hype. You build up this massive hype, we're going to put people out of work and we're going to have guaranteed base salaries for all because there's going to be no more jobs. The robots are going to be doing all the jobs, all that good stuff that you read. I don't believe that. I don't believe that in a heartbeat. And then you have this, what we call the trough of disillusionment, which is where we're starting to approach. I think probably within 3 to 5 years, we're going to be hitting that trough. There's so much hype around generative AI and what is possible and what's potential. And yes, it's going to be a catalyst to creativity. It's going to be a catalyst to productivity. It's going to be a catalyst to financial success. And for the love of God, I can say it, if you're not on the bandwagon and you're not utilizing it to increase the productivity of your team, then you're going to be the company that's working with typewriters when every other company in the world has laptop computers. And that's the best I can say it there. So it's not that it's going to change the world. We're going to move the bar higher. There's going to be an expectation now. We're going to have we're going to be less dependent on the mundane and the repetitive daily task. And I think in a perfect world, I'll be the eternal optimist here. In 5 years, I think it's not going to take away all the jobs people think it's going to take away. I think it's going to displace some of the jobs. I did a talk at 2019 InfoComm, even pre-COVID, about this very topic. And that you really are only going to be able to automate a certain percentage. I think it's going to elevate people's job satisfaction because people are going to now be focused on high value engagement. People are going to feel more utilized. People's salaries are probably going to go up that stay in the space. And yes, you're going to take away some of the lower paying jobs. But you know what? We don't have people working on manual typewriters. We don't have as many let's just say, we don't have chimney sweeps anymore. We don't have, there's as many meter maids, if that's a politically correct thing to say now. But my point is we are going to replace some repetitive, mundane jobs, and that's going to be horrible, and some people are going to lose their jobs. But in 5 years, I think we're just going to elevate the bar in productivity, and you're either on the bandwagon or you're going to get left behind.
I just can't wait for the day it can replace Gary. I mean, he doesn't
You've
perform
tried
much for
already.
my company already.
Well,
I did.
he's tried.
I actually, this is a true story. I got one of those bots, like I was telling you, the ChatGPT bots. Someone had made an icon creator. Logo creator. And so I'm like, well, I've been looking forward to get rid of Gary. Let's just see how it does. And so I
To
told
preface
it,
this,
Big Pixel.
I'm the one that does the branding and stuff like that for Big Pixel.
Yeah, Gary does all of our branding. If you've seen any picture from Big Pixel, it comes from Gary. But all of that's hot air. What's really important is AI. So I was like, all right, let's replace Gary. So I said, all right, our colors are orange and a deep navy. It's almost black. And we have a square, because it's clearly, right? And we want to be professional and a little whimsical. So I type all this in, put it into the bot. And I mean, it was so close to replacing Gary. It was just so close. No, I'm giving great. It was so bad. Like, I don't even know what was happening. Like, it was bad. And Gary, we should put in the show notes a link or a screenshot of the things it made for me. Because,
the
oh my
generated
gosh.
logos you made to replace me.
I'm going to jump in there
Mhm.
because my brother's an artist as well. Him and I play in a little band together, and he's a great artist as well. And he's like, oh, I'm not even going to do art anymore because of all this generative AI stuff. It's frustrating me. But take the Garys of the world. Gary's got a creative component to him. You can just look at him and tell. Look at this. Look at the longboards he has on his back wall. He's got a creative spirit. So the point is,
He's blowhard.
no, but if the point is, if he's using generative AI instead of David using generative AI, he's just going to get concept to paper quicker. And then he's going to use his creative juices to take that bar and raise the quality of that piece that the generative AI is doing. I've used it to generate lyrics for a song. I've used it to even create chord progressions. But at the end of the day, I still sit down with my little setup and my little acoustic guitar and run through it and tweak and polish it and make it that much better. So just like people can claim Photoshop, oh, well, shit, I'm not an artist anymore, I got Photoshop. Well, it just upped the bar. And I'll tell this anecdotal. It's not even anecdotal. It's a true story. Look it up on the internet. I'm not making this one up. Back in the early days when the stethoscope was first created, a lot of the healthcare professionals got all up in arms and said, oh, this is going to take doctors' jobs away. The stethoscope's not as sensitive as a human ear. You're not going to get accurate diagnosis. These stethoscopes are going to kill people. They're literally going to kill people and put doctors out of business. Did the stethoscope put doctors? No, it raised the bar. So the point here is, just like I mentioned earlier, I love AI, obviously, but it's just going to make the Garys of the world that much more creative. And it's going to make Gary, instead of sitting behind his desk for 12 hours coming up with his initial logo concepts and have 3 concepts to show you, now he's going to have 15 concepts in 3 hours to show you, that type of thing. So it's a productivity tool, I think.
Someone explained to me that AI is the power tool of the next generation.
Absolutely.
And I love that. It made sense, because if you give Gary, with a modicum of talent that he has, you give him the tool and it goes way further than if you give me the tool, who has even less than modicum.
Bingo. Yeah, absolutely. You said that a lot more succinctly than I did.
I will say, so I was playing with it for the first time. I was playing with Photoshop's AI goodies. I was making a thing for my family, and I took a photo that we had taken. It was my kids when they were little, and they were on a Ferris wheel. And I was going to put this up and up on some thing up on the internet. Anyway, I realized in the behind the scenes, just like everything else at Ferris wheel, there's a dude behind my kids. Well, I didn't want that. So I just wrap it around there, and poof, that guy's gone.
Yep.
Replaced by a beautiful sky, right? That looked completely. And then I realized, well, if I wanted this right aspect ratio, my daughter, who was, you can't see what I'm doing, but she had her arms out, but it was cut off pretty quick because it was the bottom of the photo. I needed the bottom to be about an inch longer to get the aspect ratio.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And then so Photoshop adds very realistically her arms extending out as though, because her shirt was started to go that way. Now, if you stared at it really close, it looks a little off, but this picture wasn't going to be that large. So there's no way in a million years you would have known that her arms were never in this photo.
Yep.
I was so blown away by just this simple thing that in Photoshop, again, modicum of talent that I have, less than Gary, that I could never have done that. Gary could have. I could have given him and said, hey, dude, can you get this right? And he would have done that. It would take him a long time to invent my daughter's arms.
This is exactly what he was saying. I could have done that in Photoshop, and it would have taken a while. But
that's not even
at the same time, taking that amount of time away and having 3 possibilities generated in under a minute that would take all that work, then I could focus on the more important parts, and that's a huge.
But even extends outside of AI, though. That's just evolution. I mean, let's put it this way: I'm a big Disney fan. I like to take my kids to Disney probably 6 times a year, and we drive, sometimes fly, but let's say we drive down there. It's 9.5 hours driving. So even outside the AI realm, before the cars were popular, let's say 1930s, and I wanted to go from North Carolina to Florida, you would say that's impossible. I can't get down there. That would take me 2 weeks over horse-drawn carriage or whatever. But you know what? I get there in 9 hours now because we have a car. It's not even AI. That's just productivity in general. So that's what I'm kind of getting at. These are just catalysts. These are just productivity tools. They're amazing tools. They're amazing productivity tools, but it's really just up in the bar.
There's a podcast, The Verge, that I love. It's a tech podcast I talk about all the time. They said that the internet, and this is true, this is happening right now, the internet is going to be flooded with C+ content. It's readable, it's okay, but it's not going to blow anyone's socks off. And but the problem is there's a lot of people that all they can make is C+ content. There's a whole flood of these people, whether that's art, whether that's writing, whether that's music, all those C+ artists, they're going away. I mean, and we all know these people. I mean, actors, how many C+ actors are there out there?
Oh, a lot.
You know, I'm not saying they're going to lose their job, but that's a good example. There's tons of them. And those guys are going to lose their job. And that scares people because there's a lot of those people out there. Those people are going to have to get another job somewhere and do something else. But if you're a B+ person or even a B- person, you're probably fine for a while. Maybe eventually it goes into the B- territory, but it's never going to be, I don't think. Like people ask me all the time, and we've mentioned this on the podcast before, but are you worried about your job? We do computer programming. Of course, they're right in our wheelhouse. And I said, what they're very good at is the what, but what humans are good at is the why and the how.
Yep, exactly.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I said that wrong.
I know where you're going. Yep.
What AI is really good at is the how. The what and the why is us. And that is when I say I need to build this, the AI doesn't know what I need to build. But once I do know, boy, it can spit out some code real nice. And that's huge. And so it's like, I'm not worried about my job because that's where we specialize. We specialize in the what and the why. The how we're getting faster at because, and Sundar Pichai said the average programmer today gets 6% faster with the use of AI tools.
Yeah.
I think it's actually probably closer to 10, honestly, because it's amazing. Some of the stuff is written for me. I'm like, that would have taken me 2 hours to go and figure out, because obviously I don't know how to do it if I'm bringing the bot in. Figure it out, write it down and get it. And so amazing stuff.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
I think also to go back to your point of the C+ people and the B- people, the C+ content can replace C+ people, but at the same time, those C+ people can use the generated content to elevate themselves to the B level. You know what I mean? So
you say that if you're a C+ person, no, there's a
let's say
reason
you're a highly
person.
motivated C+ person.
Then you're not a C+ person. That's my point. If you're a C+ person, you're going to lose your job because you do not have the ambition to be that B. And you're not going to do what it takes. If you're a C level football player, you're not going in early in the morning to train. You're doing the bare minimum.
To play the diplomat right between the two of you, I used to teach animation and I did play a little college ball on basketball. You're going to find that Gary's actually correct that you can take a C+ guy and make him a B. The problem is when you improve the tool set and what's at his disposal, all the C+ has become the B. So instinctively now they're middle of the pack again. So they drop back to the C+ world. When I used to teach animation, we always said, you can teach someone how to use 3D Max, or at the time, Autodesk, didn't own everybody. But you can't teach them good principles of animation. Just giving someone a good tool, an animation tool, doesn't make them an animator. But giving an animator that might historically be a 2D hand-drawn animator that's keyframing manually, and you give him a digital tool where he can now keyframe and expand into the 3D realm, what he produces is absolutely more amazing. But then everybody with that skill set has access to that new tool. And that's what I alluded to about this 5-year question you gave me, is that if you're not on the bandwagon of looking at it as a productivity tool and rolling out this within your organization or even your personal life, then yes, the C+ companies are going to become B+ companies. And if you don't adopt this new productivity gain that you're going to get out of the next generation and current generation of AI, you're going to remain a C+ company. So you're going to be left behind. So once everybody goes up there, then every C+ company is now going to be a B company. And you're going to be back at the middle of the pack. So that's kind of how I look at it. I don't know if that's saying the same thing, but I think that's kind of between where you two gentlemen were.
Well, and I think the really crazy thing is the people who are A+ now, they're not going to be whatever would be above that. Like the bar is now raised. The best of the best will get even better.
Yeah.
Into levels that we don't understand now. And that's what's going to change the world.
True.
Probably not AI itself, but what people can do because they have AI. Again, if I can, I can build the house with or without a power tool, dude, that house that you can build now with a power tool is crazy compared to what you had to do when you had to use the hammers, right?
Yep. Good analogy. Yep.
Well, Chuck, usually we wrap it up with a question. What are the top 3 pieces of advice for any entrepreneur, new business, or startup? But you're in a unique position to answer this question, including the use of AI. So what would your top 3 pieces of advice for any entrepreneur, new business, startup, or current small business in the ways of utilizing AI to their advantage for success?
Great question. And I know you told me to read the notes, and I didn't think through this well enough. But there's a couple of mantras I've lived my career about. Half jokingly, but half seriously, we just say, do what you love, the money will follow. Don't chase the almighty dollar, chase a passion. Because what we find is if you're passionate about number 2 pencils, you're going to sell a boatload of number 2 pencils. If you're passionate about AI, do that. Get so you're motivated to succeed at whatever you do. So kind of the first one I always tell people is do what you love, the money will follow. Don't try to make a bunch of money and hope that you're going to enjoy your weekends in retirement, because there's too many use cases where people don't make it to retirement anyway. And then you're frustrated for 5 days out of the 7. So find something you're happy with and do that. The second one is probably do the impossible. And I use that phrase not lightly and not so ambiguous as it may sound, but I always remember it's on the front of my desk. Walt Disney's famous quote, he says, it's always fun to do the impossible. Because everything Disney pulled off, and I'm a big follower of what he's done, and people don't realize that most of his awards and success are actually for technologies, not for creativity. He always had that phrase, let's do the impossible. It's always fun to do the impossible, because things are only impossible when you haven't done them yet. Things that were 10 years ago impossible when I was playing my little Madden football game, and I said, hey, I'm going to see photorealistic characters running on a field, and this guy named John Madden's going to have all these NFL football players running around in photorealistic fashion. I never thought in a million years we'd be at that point. That was impossible when I was playing my little Mattel LED game. So do the impossible. Set your goals for that. The old adage, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. You'll get there. Just pick something that's not in the box. Pick something that's not been done. That's a real motivational thing in a career as well. The third and final is probably a little controversial because you can overdo it. And I use the word pivot, one word, pivot. What I mean by pivot, especially if you're pursuing a career and especially if you're going down the AI path, things change on a weekly basis. Yes, you got to have conviction. Yes, you got to have focus. But pivot, things change so fast. And again, I go back to Gardner because we use them a lot. You'll find that tech CEOs that don't pivot are out of business in 24 months. Tech CEOs that see the market, try it, learn from it, fail, then go, let's try it this way. Oh, let's try it this way. Oh, I'm going to pivot again. Let's try it this way. They'll eventually figure out what they need to do to succeed. So don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to rethink and question yourself. Don't be so regimented in your approach. Don't be that politician that's afraid to say, oh, you pivot. That's a bad thing for a politician. That's an amazing, awesome thing for an innovator and someone going down a career path.
Very
Excellent, excellent group of answers there. So if anybody else wanted to learn more about you or about your company PRSONAS, how could they find you?
If you're interested in the healthcare, we like to send people to ihealthassist.com. That is a passion play. We mentioned passion that we're going down for healthcare and helping patients. But PRSONAS personality engines under PRSONAS.com, PRSONAS. That's an easy one to find. I hesitate to do this. I shouldn't say that. That sounds condescending. I didn't mean it that way or negative. I actually love LinkedIn. I'm not a Facebook fan. I only TikTok on personal stuff and Facebook on personal, but I love LinkedIn. And some of my best contacts and my best relationships are built through LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, but please, for the love of God, don't use this as a mechanism for calling me up and telling me how you can change my HR practices and how you can save me a ton of money with,
That is
IT
the worst thing
consulting
about
services.
LinkedIn.
I hate
Yeah.
that, but it's a great network and it's really a good network. So I do like LinkedIn. I do tend to correspond a lot with LinkedIn.
To scare David, I get at least 5 emails a day from LinkedIn telling me all these wonderful creative director positions that are just waiting for me. So the more you make fun of me, the more these emails start to look better
See?
and better. No, I'm just kidding.
That's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Go for it, man.
Well,
You'll be
we're
replaced
gonna
by AI
add-
from them too.
That's true. That's true. We're going to add all those links to our show notes and in the description below the video. So anybody who wants to get to know more about you or your companies, just click below.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Chuck, for joining us. This has been a lot of fun.
Appreciate it, gentlemen. Always entertaining.
I probably could have gone off on another hour and a half tangent of animation and Disney with you. So maybe in the future we'll have you back on and just do that.
That'd be fun.
We'll leave
I
Dave
enjoy
out of
this
it.
conversation. Yeah, Disney is definitely, from a musician standpoint, that was good. Who influenced you? Well, like Keith Richards as a guitarist. But when it comes down to business and how I run my business, I used to open up my weekly company meetings with, I called it the weekly wisdom of Walt. And I would come up with a quote from Walt and talk about how that applied to our business ventures. And everybody's like, oh, there goes Chuck talking about Walt again. But yeah, he was pretty amazing fella.
All right.
Very
Well, I think
cool.
that wraps it up for this week.
All right, gentlemen, I appreciate it.
Thank you guys very much. We will be back next week. Have a good one, everybody.
Y'all take care.
See you guys.
Hi, I'm Christy Pronto, Content Marketing Director here at Big Pixel. Thank you for listening to this episode of the BizDev Podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email, hello@thebigpixel.net. The BizDev Podcast is produced and presented by Big Pixel. See you next week. Until then, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Threads, YouTube, and LinkedIn.